So good afternoon, everybody. Just want to kick off and say thanks to Siobhan and Cher for hosting us in this fantastic facility. It's brilliant to be back in Liverpool. I spent 3 of the best years of my life here, so it's a city that's very close to my heart. It's the first event we've hosted here since, I think, November 2019 as well, so first time back in the city post-COVID, so great to see you all here. We've also got a live stream today, so thanks to everybody who's joined us live remotely. You will be able to ask questions via the YouTube link as well, so please ask questions in the comment section when we get the panel underway later on. I just want to say a few words about me and my organisation, FinTech North, but before I do that, I just want to say a big thanks to 2 of our event partners today. DTM Legal, a Northwest law firm. We've got Kate, we've got Ali, we've got Richard here with us in the room. Again, without their support, we wouldn't have been able to shape today's content, and we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do supporting the ecosystems across the North. And likewise, James and the team at 300 Brains, again, been sort of pivotal in pulling this event together. So I want to say thanks to both of our partners for helping make this happen. I'm Joe Roche, I'm Engagement Manager at FinTech North, and FinTech North as an organisation aims to be the focal point for FinTech in the north of England, in the Northern Powerhouse. We started life as a one-day event as part of Leeds Digital Festival back in April 2016, and since then we've become a bit of a movement, we've built a bit of a community, and we've hosted events, conferences, trade missions in Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle. We hosted an event in Hull earlier on this year. We're looking to host an event in Blackpool next year, and we're talking about hosting something up in Durham as well. We are here really to promote the North's offering as one. We're not here to promote any one region as the capital of FinTech or the capital of payments or any subsector. We believe that by promoting the North as one region, we can compete on an international stage with the likes of London, Singapore, other kind of big super FinTech hubs around the world. This graphic just brings some of that stuff to life, basically. Primarily, FinTech North brings people together to champion best practice, to champion diversity, to share ideas, and provide a platform ultimately for early stage companies and scale-ups to have profile within the community and within the economy, and also to generate connections and business development opportunities as well. So we've got a great group of people here today. I encourage you all to network, hang around for drinks afterwards, and make some connections as well. Just want to say a few words about how we operate as a business at FinTech North. It's entirely self-funded, as the slide previously showed. We rely entirely on the support of partners in our ecosystem to come on board and support the work that we do. So we can work with organisations from all shapes and sizes. You'll see on the screen there, we've got everybody from regional FinTech startups right through to global providers of financial services. We can provide value at all stages of a company's life cycle. We work on events like this one, and we can also work across a 12-year partnership as well, so supporting them in their business development as well. So I just want to flag that for anybody interested in getting more involved with FinTech North. Just to move on to what FinTech looks like in the north of England, so that's the boring stuff out the way. This is what we're all here for. Just as a quick whistle-stop tour, we're here in Liverpool today, so what better place to start? As many of you all know, Liverpool has a real heritage in wealth management, and we see that reflected in some of the FinTech propositions that we see. As we're going to find out today as well, there's a real strength in gaming and creative and digital here in the city, so what better place to explore the links between the two sectors? In Greater Manchester, there's a real specialism in payments and e-commerce. It's probably the largest FinTech ecosystem outside of London, actually, in England. Probably about 100 or so FinTechs in Manchester. It's probably the second largest private equity hub in Europe after London as well, so there's quite a mature funding landscape there. It's home to some of FinTech's rising stars, people like Nevo and Mojo Mortgages, and home to some of the more advanced established players like Adyen and Klarna, who some of you will be familiar with. Over the other side of the Pennines, in the Leeds City region, there's a bit of a specialism in banking and lending. Some interesting developments happening in Leeds actually at the moment. The Bank of England, the FCA, the Centre for Greening Finance and Investment, and the British Infrastructure Bank have all either landed or are landing in the city. Up in the northeast, we're seeing another emerging specialism in payments as well, probably down to the presence of companies like Sage, who most of you will know from their accounting software, and also Canny, who are well known for their payments infrastructure innovation as well. The northeast is also home to Atom Bank in Durham, one of the UK's best known challenger banks as well. So there's a story to tell about Northern FinTech. We're seeing some specialisms emerge, but you do see a broad capability across the north as well. You do get payments firms in Leeds, you do get challenges in Manchester, etc., etc. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our partners for today, one of our partners. I'm going to hand over to Ali and Kate. Kate, I believe we'll be hearing from you first, a bit of an update on DTM, and then we'll be hearing from Ali as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Have I done that right? Is it on? Yeah. not so hot on the technology with the mic. But yeah, thank you, Joe, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be here today, partnering this event with FinTech North, and thank you very much again to Eagle Labs for hosting us. As Joe said, I'm Kate Roberts. I'm one of the partners and head of our Liverpool office at DTM Legal, and I'm here today with Ali, Brennan, and Richard Harris, who's over at the back. I've spent the last 10 years working with fintechs and supporting them with various business needs, and we're here today to talk a little bit about that, but also talking about how to essentially get yourself ready for investment. We've got some great speakers coming up, which I know I'm looking forward to hearing from, and I'm sure everybody else agrees with me. When the opportunity to sponsor this particular event came up, it was one that we thought really fit the bill for us as a firm, because we are interested in all things fintech. And also because of the history of gaming in Liverpool. You know, Liverpool has a really good history of gaming. We've got the likes of Sony, who've come back to the city region and opened an office just across the way from where we are over on Old Hall Street. We've seen fintech being used in gaming across the years in different ways, in the likes of in-app purchases, digital currencies. I know I'm certainly very au fait with that in terms of Robux, V-Bucks. Can't say how much I've spent over the years on that with my two little boys, and I think, you know, they are definitely leading the way in the crypto market in that sense, young children. But what we're looking at today is how gaming technology is being used by fintechs to look at positive ways going forward and to bring positivity into that marketplace. Now, as a firm, DTM Legal are really proud of our northern roots. We started off in Chester and opened in Liverpool in 2013. And Liverpool, in my opinion, is a phenomenal city. It's where I was born and bred, and I am delighted to see the innovation that we've got going on in the city as a whole. We're home to world-class innovation, and we have the infrastructure in Liverpool to be leading in that, not just nationally, but internationally too. Now, earlier this year, Liverpool City Region unveiled a multi-billion-pound innovation plan at an event in Parliament. I'm just going to have to look at this for the figures because I can't remember them all. But the City Region is aiming to invest nearly double the national target for research and development by 2030, which is adding an estimated almost 42 billion and creating 44,000 jobs in the City Region. Now, the City Region has traditionally led the way in the likes of infection control, materials, chemistry, AI, but there's absolutely no reason why the fintech marketplace can't play its own part and take huge advantage of the innovation drive and that funding. Now, Liverpool is home to lots of emerging fintechs, including Cash Plus Bank, who have recently taken a large space in the Spine, which is the focal point of the new Paddington Village development. So there's so much going on in Liverpool right now, and there's just so many opportunities that we would urge everybody to really take the opportunity and explore. Right, so as I mentioned at the beginning anyway, we see gamification as an exciting development in the fintech world, and we are particularly interested in the way gamification can be used in positive and ethical ways, and ways that will improve the customer experience, promote financial education, promote responsible spending habits, sustainability, monitoring carbon footprint. You know, the list is endless of the possibilities and positive things that gamification brings to this ecosystem. The technology, I think, makes finance far more accessible and inclusive across the board. And I mean, not just, you know, to you and I who are sat here, but from children, you know, from young children learning how to save money, how to spend money responsibly, how to keep track. And it's really starting from a very young age and coming all the way through. And I'm sure we'll see further developments in that arena, you know, with the likes of AI as well. Some of you might have already seen the DTM partner profile video that Joe shared. I'm not offended if you haven't, because I found it even more hideous than having to stand up in front of you today. That was, I think, 14 minutes of my life that was quite cringeworthy, and I've not quite been able to watch it back. But you know, it's there. If you want to see it, go and watch it. It's just me talking, probably equally as cringy as this is. But anyway, as I said, we are really proud at DTM of our northern roots. You know, it's the fact that we have the talent here in the northwest to service FinTech's needs. One of the things that I feel quite passionately about is making sure that we grow the ecosystem here. You know, we talk to lots of FinTechs and everybody wants to grow the ecosystem, wants to bring money into this area, but then we ask them about the professional services and where they go to get their professional services done, and lots of them will still go down to London. And what we want to promote and push, you know, not just DTM, but across the board in the north, you know, in Liverpool, in Manchester and Leeds, that there are professional service firms here who can deliver that high quality professional services, you know, whether that be legal or accountancy. We've got the skills and the talent here. You don't need to look down south. You know, we should support everyone to grow the ecosystem as a whole. We've worked with FinTechs for the last 10 years, and we've worked with them from the start up, and some of those that we work with are now very large PLCs with multi-million turnovers. And one of the important things that we see is getting it right at the start, and Ali's going to talk to you a bit more about that when she gets up. Now, it is a challenging time for businesses at the moment. You know, we've got record high inflation, the war in Ukraine, we've got economic uncertainty, all of which do and have impacted the appetite for investment. So one of the things we need to look at is how we almost future-proof that for our clients. According to a report from KPMG, FinTech investment in the UK reached 9.6 billion at the halfway mark this year, which is almost 3 times lower than the just shy of 28 billion seen in the first half of last year. Now, that's not unique to the UK, although FinTech funding has dropped for all major regions. It's not all bad news, though, because actually the UK does still remain at the centre of European FinTech innovation, and British FinTechs in particular have attracted more funding than those in France, Germany, China, Brazil and Canada combined this year. So there's still real opportunity for FinTechs in the UK to get that investment. While there is that opportunity, though, what it does show and what it does evidence is that it's a competitive market out there to get the investment. So what FinTechs need to do is put themselves in the best possible position to withstand what we will probably see as greater scrutiny with due diligence by the likes of the VCs and other investors. So at DTM, we really do understand the challenges that FinTechs face in order to grow. And with that in mind, I'm going to gratefully hand over to Ali to carry on with this segment. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. I too am going to hold my comfort blanket. Is it working? So I'm a partner in DTM's corporate team. We help FinTech businesses of all shapes and sizes, from startup right through to sales, mergers and acquisitions. FinTech's a really exciting sector. It's seen incredible growth and investment, but as Kate mentioned, you know, the landscape's changed a bit recently, and the whole world is going through a fairly uncertain and changeable time. It's also a very competitive market, which is great. There are lots of businesses, but that means that each business needs to find a way to set themselves and their products apart and to grow sustainably and to future-proof themselves as much as possible. So navigating the investment market and how you get investment and how you retain investment and grow is a key part of this. And although law is often rightly considered quite boring and a boring necessity that our clients come to us because they feel they have to, actually there's a lot of positive things we can offer, and there's a lot it can do to maximise investment opportunities and to facilitate success and growth. So I just want to outline sort of what I see as the key points that every business should bear in mind and can help in the hunt for investment and growth. The first of these, which is often overlooked, is the ownership, management and structure of your business. I can't tell you how many times people come to us and they've got a spreadsheet or something in their head that says, this is what my business looks like. But actually, when I look at Companies House or something, that is not what their business looks like. And having it in a spreadsheet or in your head is not sufficient. It's not the same as documenting it and implementing it. It's really important to get the relationships between your shareholders, your directors, your management, and your investors right. And to allow the company to maximise its investment opportunities. And also, if you've got a clear vision about what you want, it helps you attract investors who have the same aims as you, who want to allow your business to grow in the way you see it growing. So, you know, that is the first really key point, is it's worth taking time to sit down, to think about what you want, where you want to go, and how you want the relationships within your company to work. The second point is intellectual property. Now, all businesses have intellectual property, whether that's just a name, a logo, a brand, through to all the software and source code behind apps. It's really important to protect this early doors, to get to know what intellectual property you have, and to make sure you know how it can be protected, and that you take whatever steps you can and are appropriate. This also really helps with investment, because if you've got a clear plan of this is the intellectual property we have, or this is what we are developing, and this is how we can protect it, this is what we are doing to protect it, then investors are going to see you as a good bet, as opposed to someone who has let an employee develop something and not got ownership of it, and that employee's left, and then you're left trying to argue with them that you own the IP, not them. That moves me on to employees. Employees and the people who work for your business can and should be your greatest asset. At the moment, recruitment and retention is really hard, and that's for every business. We are finding it in the legal sector. I know all our clients are struggling with recruiting talent, retaining talent. And it's also tough because the world's changed in the last 3 years, and the way people want to work has changed, and businesses are struggling to keep pace and adapt. But actually taking the time to think about your workforce, to think about the talent and the skills you want in your business and how you recruit that and retain that, is always going to be time well spent, and it will also impress investors. I actually also think that gamification could be a game changer in employment. You know, actually engaging your employees, thinking outside the box in terms of benefits, incentives. Not every business has the money to offer huge packages in terms of salaries, but actually if you can offer something different, then that may allow you to still recruit and retain the skills without them thinking people will just go to the person offering the biggest salary. It's also about putting in place the policies and the procedures that give your staff comfort that you're going to treat them right, and that everything is in place to allow progression, to allow them to achieve what they want to achieve. And that is all really, really important. The next thing is customers, and obviously one of the big themes of today is how gaming can attract, assist, drive in customer engagement, and this is really key to businesses. But actually, something I spend a lot of time doing in the commercial world is helping businesses understand who their customers are. And the first thing of this is, are you dealing with consumers? Are you dealing with other businesses? Are you dealing with a mixture of both? Because actually, your answer to that question then shows you the direction that all your contracts and engagements with those customers have to take. And if you get it wrong, it can be really, really costly. As lawyers, we often see how spending the time on getting your terms and conditions, your customer contracts right at the outset, whilst it may seem like a lot of money when you're setting up, actually saves you a huge amount of money when you don't have to employ Richard Harris to sort out the mess later. So, you know, it is money well spent. And also, it's going to be a big part of any investor due diligence is what are your contracts, because that secures your income. linked to the relationship with customers is regulation, and it's constantly evolving, particularly in the technology sectors and the internet. There's FCA requirements, data protection legislation, anti-money laundering regulations, consumer rights and protections. The list is pretty daunting for any business, and it's really important that you try as best you can to stay abreast of developments and compliance, because we all read the headlines when the ICO or the FCA hands down a major fine. The ICO has the power to issue a fine equaling 4% of turnover, and that's turnover, not profit. The FCA handed down fines of £500 million in 2021. It's scary, and actually, in a lot of those cases, the businesses that get the fines, there are probably a huge number of businesses who are equally non-compliant, but that poor business has been picked on to be the example to get the massive fine, because that terrifies people and that brings the headlines, and so you don't want to be that business. So it is really important to try and stay abreast and make sure that you are complying as much as you can. And it is difficult because it is always changing, but hopefully we can help with that. The final area I want to talk about is supply chains. And so a big buzzword at the moment is ESG, environment, social governance, and it's very popular throughout the market with investors, people looking, suppliers, big companies want to ask their supply chain, well, how's your supply chain? How have you checked all the way down that everyone you're dealing with meets our requirements? So actually, as a business, you can start that by putting together an appropriate due diligence, a checklist that you can ask all your suppliers, that gives you can, when you're asked for it, you can pass that information on. You can retain the records of contracts and terms and conditions. It minimises the chance of disputes later. It allows you to show that you're proactive, not reactive, and hopefully puts you in a really strong position, both for the success of your business, but also for attracting investments. So it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and hopefully it provides some food for thought. Kate, Richard and I are around for the whole event, so if you've got any questions or want to talk about anything further, then feel free to come and talk to us. Now, thankfully, I shall sit down.
Thank you very much, Kate and Ali. Thank you for that. You've touched on some of the areas that we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into over the course of the next hour and a half or so. Yeah, if I can just get you to leave those microphones where you sat, that would be fantastic. I'm going to shortly hand over to our next speaker, Dave Martin, who's COO of the British Esports Association. Just before I do that, I just wanted to say a little bit about where the idea for this event came from. I was speaking to a couple of the chaps from the University of Liverpool before, and just more and more at some of FinTech North's most recent events, we've been hearing about user experience, service design, customer centricity. Gaming has kind of been cropping up quite organically at events that are talking about things like savings, blockchain, etc. So I just thought it'd be great to get everybody together and just have that chat, see where that overlap is. And thanks to Kate and Ali for giving that overview there, because I think we're going to talk about some of those topics now. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dave Martin. Thank you. Cheers. Right.
Hi, Alison. When you mentioned FCA and compliance, I started to go a little dizzy because I'm here to talk about a few different things. I'll talk about British Esports, and we're a federation now, but that's only very recent, so no problem. But I wear multiple hats in the esports space. So along with this role, which I'm very proud to be involved in, we're also involved in team ownership as individuals. So we founded London Royal Ravens, which is Call of Duty, for those of you that know it. 2.5 million people in the UK play Call of Duty, 26 years of age, twice the average household income. So they're affluent, they're young, they spend money. And we got involved in that franchise when it launched 3 years ago. So there are 12 of them in the world. In another game called Rocket League, we own a team called Resolve, which has a partnership with Williams in F1. And then we also have Esports Global, and I'm the CEO of Esports Global, and that is going to be a Guernsey PIF, $50 to $75 million investment fund, all things esports. So we're just on the kind of grind of all that. So we've been through the FCA stuff, regulatory stuff over the last 6 months or so. So if I look tired, it's 3 young kids and trying to launch a fund. For those of you that have been there, it can be painful, but also there's a reason why. And it's to make sure that we can do it correctly. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things, really, and I'm going to kind of hop around in different spaces. Just show of hands, who knows what esports is aware of esports in general? Okay, that's quite interesting. There are, 5.5 billion people who are online in the world, and half of them know what esports is, and half of them are gamers, about 2.5 billion people. In the UK, there are 40, depending on who you ask, but latest stats, about 44 million gamers of varying things from Candy Crush to Call of Duty, as we discussed. And there are millions of individuals who will get involved and watch and support individuals who play esports. So esports is human versus human, always, often in teams, and there are about 40 esports titles around. And these tournaments and events are played anywhere from a bedroom to a stadium. So you can fill stadiums. Often we're filling arenas in the UK of 5,000 to 10,000 people who want to come and watch their teams compete and the players compete. So that's a kind of what esports is. You know, I think what's really interesting when we start to come into that space at this moment in time is just a little bit about kind of who's watching at this moment in time. We're talking about huge numbers, and we're talking about primarily millennials and Gen Zs, right? So it's very similar people who are in the FinTech space, who understand FinTech, who are engaged in banking and financial service products that you have. I have a slight track record with FinTech Circle a while ago, and I've been involved in understanding that ecosystem and how, particularly in banking services, challenger banks really kind of took precedence from traditional banks when regulation kicked in around about 2010. I think you've got a really exciting marketplace here, right, in terms of people that you want to get hold of. So if you're looking for acquisition of client, this is where you should be looking in the esports and gaming space. I think if you're looking to diversify product or look at new product entrants, I think you should be thinking about that. I think you should be thinking about it if you're in payment services, microtransactions, if you're interested in blockchain, those spaces, but also I think insurance tech and those spaces at this moment in time, there's a lot of that isn't there at this moment in time that you might want to think about. How do we make sure that events, that teams, players are insured? I think you've got solutions and services to that. I'm not going to go through all of this right now because what we're talking about are huge numbers. Like I say, around about 500 million. We're talking about that being 640, 650 million within the next couple of years, and some of the projections take it even higher than that in terms of an audience. Revenue streams, quite interesting conversation. Barclays are leading this at the moment, and there was a recent report that came out in the FT that I thought was really exciting that talks about the addressable market. The video games market is around about $200 billion. It's a huge marketplace. And some people would say that esports is a micro part of that, about $1 billion. I think it's much more than that. I think it drives so much more value to the video games market than just the $1 billion, which is primarily sat in this sponsorship and media rights, publisher fees element. When I think about products and services that our players promote, headsets, keyboards, controllers, whatever it might be, that's a huge value driver. And fans are watching their heroes play and saying, what are they playing with? What does it look? A bit like football boots or whatever it might be. I want to get what the pros have got. So we think that marketplace is bigger than that. And we think that Barclays' estimations looking forward to 2030 saying that this could be a $12, $13 billion market are absolutely realistic. And I think that's what we're backing in my other world from the fund's perspective. Again, a whole bunch of revenue stream stuff. This is an important slide that I just wanted to talk to you about briefly. there are a lot of intrinsic rewards that come from esports. Like you say, we've talked about human versus human. During the pandemic, sports stopped, school stopped, lots of things stopped, and the connections between human beings started to drop, particularly for those school kids. Esports continued because we could do it online. We could get people together. We could play our tournaments. We could allow them to connect. We could allow them to communicate. So that was a wonderful thing. And what esports does in a very similar way to sport is it teaches you teamwork, it teaches you resilience, it teaches you communication and strategic thinking, all of those really kind of valuable rewards that you get from being involved in any team. So, we're huge advocates for that space. The other bit is, it isn't just some players. Like sport, there's an ecosystem that swirls around it. And we've developed an education program. There are around about 5,000 16 to 18-year-olds studying an A-level equivalent of Pearson BTEC in the business of esports, and they get a flavor of all this ecosystem. And it's business learning contextualized around esports. So my other world has been in education, and engaging and retaining young, talented people is incredibly important. So developing these programs has been a real joy for us to be involved in. And we're following that on with the degree programs that have been launched with the College of Esports this year. First cohort, 40 people studying degree level university education. And there are other education providers delivering that at this moment in time. So a huge esports industry made up of teams and tournament organizers and hardware and different services. But I wanted to talk to you about one particular project, because we talk about technology and how it can be for good. I'm a parent of 3 kids, 8 to 10 months old. But I'm worried about their getting online, not just in gaming, but in whether they start to get onto social media and different things. How is that journey going to be for them? Where are those people who may want to access either from being toxic or worse, trying to get access to young people? And how do we help that moving forward? And how does British esports help that whole process to move? So 18 months ago, we sat down and said, we'd like to create a safer space for young people to meet who are interested in gaming and esports. And we took that idea after we developed a very short MVP to IBM and said that we think you've got some technology and you've certainly got the ability to roll out this platform. We've got the content that we could put into a membership platform. We've got the understanding and the partnerships and the team networks to develop this safer space for young people. Can we do it? And they agreed, and a press release came out a year or so ago now to develop this safer space. So if you're under 18, you can come in. There's an age verification process that you can work through with your parents or yourself, depending on your age. And then there's a content moderation process that changes depending on your age range and where you are. But what it allows people to do is to find their communities, because right now in certain places they maybe not finding the communities in the way they want to find them, particularly in those younger years. And parents are really, like myself, are really concerned about how that might happen and where they're going to find them. So, this for us is a really exciting project. What's happened in the last 12 months is there is a body called the Global Esports Federation, which is like British Esports Federation, but for a global network, who said, hey, we have 120 member associations, federations in about 115 countries. How about we try and roll this out and create this safer space globally? But then can we use that network to connect people, to share education, insight, ideas, whatever that might be? And I'm delighted to say that we're now at the place where we can say that that is going to happen, and that we're going to have this global space where young people can connect, where those communities can come together, but we can do it in a safer way. Nothing's totally safe. You can't wrap everything in cotton wool and protect it. But what we're doing here is putting that layer of comfort, I think, for a lot of parents, that when your young person is online, that they're connecting through to people that have been verified. And that when somebody if somebody can get through that gate, and if someone wants to try hard enough, like many things, they can get through that gate, when it comes to actually being able to connect with that person, the technology that we've put in place will start to identify the trends of connectivity and communication that might end up asking for email addresses or Twitter handles or gamer profiles. So that's a really solid way for us to think about using technology for good. And I think that's a really kind of important tie-in to our conversation. This is just, for those of you that have never seen an event, this is the kind of thing that happens on a global stage. If you've got a, League of Legends World Championships, this is what happens. And these are passionate young people who are in an arena like I might be watching football at some time or another sport. They're there. I think I just want to finish off with a couple of things to give you some more comfort about where esports is going. I think there's a lot of conversations about prize money, and that's really, it's a really important part of esports. So again, payment services providers, FX providers, quite interesting in this space as well. A lot of money coming in and out of the UK to different people. A lot of talent around the world being signed to UK teams. How do we move that money in and out? If someone's getting paid, and they do get paid, 100,000 to do an influencer deal for someone, or £500,000 to do an influencer deal, but it's in US dollar, how does the transaction of money flow to and fro? So I think those are things to start thinking about from a technology and an information solution. But we are moving to a medal events basis here as well. There's always going to be huge events with prize money, and they are going to be marquee events. But in August in Birmingham, we had the Commonwealth Esports Championships. And if any of you saw the news yesterday, there was a BBC piece saying, we're not hearing about a Commonwealth event in 2026, a medal-based event. I think there will be more news for everyone around that, and there will be more news around more sports events incorporating that medal events within them, and that will include, I'm certain, the Commonwealth Games Federation as we move towards 2026 and also to 2030. Now, what that's really valuable for us is we've seen people open up from a different space now. So we're seeing brands and partners who haven't been involved in the space before come flooding in because the medal and the development of talent space becomes really, really important now. How do we take a 14-year-old who's incredibly good, like they would be in any other sport, and make them the heroes of tomorrow? We don't have a huge amount of them here in the UK. We're very good at shoutcasting, we're very good at broadcast production, those things, but we don't have a lot of world champions. And what we're going to do is we're going to create medal heroes. So you're going to hear of things like Home Nation Series, where England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland play off in different areas, and the talent development pools come through. And then I think you're going to see the IOCs and the Commonwealth Games of this world look at how do they bring those new audiences, those new eyeballs into sport, where they have this challenge right now, which is declining audience participation. Look at football, look at NFL, look at these things at the moment. They're getting older and older and older, and they want to try and bridge the gap and connect the two together. It's not an easy thing, but I think medals are a part of doing that, and we're very excited about that journey. So I hope that was useful for you. This is the kind of thing that we could do a much longer session about, and I'm going to be around for a while if you want to ask me any questions. But thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you. If I can just grab your microphone as well, if you don't mind just leaving that at the front for us. Yeah, thank you very much. That kind of helps set the scene for us a bit again there. So thanks to Dave and to his colleague Lat for joining us here in Liverpool today. And just a big thanks to all of our speakers. People have come from up and down the country to join us here today. So thanks for the effort to be here in the north talking about this sort of frontier topic. Next, we're going to hear from Barclays. So I'm going to introduce David from Barclays, who's going to say a bit about the esports offering here at our hosts. So over to you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't think you've got any slides, have you? So I'll just
yeah, I think
move you on.
Dave teed me up nicely. So I'm David Gowans. I lead the games and esports activity across Barclays. So obviously Barclays is a huge global bank, and something that is also global is absolutely the games industry. No matter if you are making a game as a single developer or you're one of the biggest games companies in the world, you compete at a global level for users, for games players anywhere. So we feel at Barclays, and I'm so glad we can be here today because we're in kind of one of our Eagle Lab spaces, that we can help at every end of that journey. From entrepreneurs setting up and starting their own games and connecting with our Eagle Labs network to help them through that. And now there has never been a better time to do that for starting entrepreneurs. You know, you have engines that you can use freely at kind of first instance, and then, you know, have a licensing model that works for you, like Unreal or Unity. And you also can have a quite small team where you don't need to build a large amount of assets because of the asset stores that exist and knowledge that's already out in the games community to help you build your first games experiences and publish them online, no matter the platform. So for us, we get to see every single angle of the games industry, esports included, and the incredible amount of growth that's happening in the sector. I don't think there's ever been a better time to be in games as a consumer or as a games maker yourself, with the amount of platforms, the technology, the number of ways to now monetize, and the audience is bigger than ever. And of course, everyone can see that. Everyone is interested within the games industry in investing in the industry and helping it grow, just as we are at Barclays. And I think for us, it's all about what we can do to help support the industry in authentic ways. My team has existed for a few years now. We bank a good chunk of the games sector. We bank some of the biggest games companies in the world and offer them real global financial support with whatever their needs are, compared to also supporting the games industry. And my personal favorite area is startup, high-growing studios within the UK sector. I don't think you see more creativity than you do within the UK games industry. We're a highly creative nation who has also a deep technical knowledge. And when you put that together, we have an incredible amount of innovation that comes from games. And I think, you know, seeing today in a lot of the activity around FinTech and around what's happening within kind of the game space, a lot of innovation we see that moves across all businesses really starts in games. And I get to see that within Barclays because all of my peers who work across other industries are amazed at these new kind of technologies that have existed in games for years. Things like, you know, machine learning, AI, forms of micropayment. And I think the fantastic thing that we see about the games industry is it's almost like a test bed sometimes for what works. The industry isn't scared to jump into new technologies and really put it through a test. And if it works and sticks, generally it can also then work in other industries and then be part of our society. If it doesn't work, it fails really quickly, and the industry, you know, can kind of root out certain fads that might hit kind of, you know, over the years. So I feel so lucky to be part of the team within Barclays in leading our support for the game sector. And as I said, and as I think Dave mentioned as well, from some of our reporting, you know, there has been an incredible amount of positive growth. We publish a couple of times every year a review of spend within games. So we look through all of our platforms, all of our services, our merchants, our kind of payment rails, to look at what's happening within the industry as well, what's happening from a consumer level. And over kind of lockdown in particular, we saw an incredible amount of people turn to games as a way to entertain themselves, to connect with friends that they weren't able to connect with anymore. Or, you know, as Dave mentioned, within esports, turn to competitive activity. It was so great to see traditional sports pivot very quickly through the model that esports has been doing and continues to kind of build and move forward with their audience. So games was actually the fastest growing industry of all of the industries that we tracked. The interesting thing now is, now that is over, because people have invested within games and found games, a lot of that spend is continuing as well, and we aren't seeing some of the traditional drop-offs that we see in some other areas. So games, I think it's one of those things that really gets its hooks into people. It's a new, you know, it's constantly evolving. I was going to say new, but the games industry is about 50 years old, so it's not a new way, but a constant kind of the evolving way for people to entertain, engage. And I think what I certainly see from a business level are, you know, games makers are some of the most creative kind of people that exist, you know, on the planet. And I think what I've been able to see from the support that we can offer at Barclays, just like in our Eagle labs that we're in here, in Liverpool today is that we can help with some of those business skills, making sure that when someone is creating their game, that they can have some stability to it, to ensure that, one, they can release their game. It sometimes feels like, and I'm sure there's some developers in the audience, that every game is a miracle when you find out what goes into actually making it release. But that we can help and make sure that that isn't a one-off and that's maintained and that developers can grow. So we run a number of programs and initiatives to help with that. One that we have advertised at the moment is we're running a program in partnership with UKI, the trade body for video games in the UK, to help mobile developers. Mobile games are responsible for an incredible amount of growth within the game space. A lot of people look at mobile and, or play mobile games and don't consider themselves a gamer. The hours that are put in to mobile games, they are absolutely gamers. And the amount of spend and growth that can happen in that space as well. So we're really looking to help the talent that exists within the UK and people working particularly in mobile to help them grow right now. We constantly are running programs to help new and emerging or kind of growing businesses. You can find us at games.barclays to see how you can connect with us and how we can help you moving forward. But what I love about today, particularly that we're here in Liverpool in the north, is that the UK games industry is incredibly diverse and can be represented everywhere. Liverpool is such a hotbed of games development through to some of the historic activity in studios that have existed, and those those companies now moving on into various of the studios that sometimes go back to those same roots or sometimes branch out to themselves. But 80% of the UK games business exists outside of London, and it's a huge national industry, and there is so much activity in the north with and leg room really to grow in the north, where in other areas they don't really have that. That it's fantastic to see events like today happen where we can explore why the games industry is successful, how we can support it more, and how we can help it grow and celebrate its success. We want to be a true partner at Barclays in helping doing that, and there is I won't even touch an inch of what is available within the games industry. But what I always say to my peers is the games industry isn't only creative, isn't only the most fun sector to work in, but something that I'll leave you with today is you need to keep an eye on the games industry no matter what sector of business that you're in. The innovation, the new ideas, the technologies that come from this creative and innovative sector will always push the limits, and they will then move into other areas. If you want to be ahead of the game, if you want to be at the forefront of technology, look to games and be aware. And as a lifelong gamer and turning this lifelong passion of mine into a role within a global bank, it's a hell of a fun way to spend your day as well. So thank you. That's me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, David. That was a real rallying cry there. Loved it. We're doing it here in the north, which is the whole point of today's event. I think David's touched on a few things there about how gaming and FinTech tend to lead, as two separate sectors. And to borrow a phrase of James, is actually when we were scoping this event, they're almost like two galaxies that are sort of slowly colliding with one another. These worlds are going to become one soon enough with the rise of the metaverse and all of that. And indeed, a lot of the technology that we're speaking about here, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, these things have been around for ages in the world of gaming. So yeah, great to have this discussion today. And to bring this to life a little bit further, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Adam from Calls 9. So yeah, over to you, Adam. Thank you. Can you turn the dial?
Yeah, great stuff. Okay. Brilliant, great. Well, thank you for everyone who's obviously helped put on today's event. I'm going to try and bring this together, I guess, in a few different ways. My mind's kind of buzzing actually after hearing everybody speak, so I've got to try and stay on track. Although I was told to have a little bit more time than I thought, so we might explore this in a bit more detail. I'm the CEO and founder of Calls9, and we're a digital innovation and transformation agency, which means we build digital products and services, and we help people improve existing digital products and services. We've been running for 12 years, so we absolutely predate some of the technology I'm going to talk about today, but I think that's what makes it interesting. There's a real convergence happening at the moment, and for me and for our business, it's very much around Web3. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about in terms of gamification, FinTech, and how all of these things come together. Just out of interest, raise your hands if you understand what Web3 is, if you feel like you understand it. There will not be a pop quiz on this, so this is just, okay, right. Keep your hand raised if you hold cryptocurrency. Yeah? No, is that up or down? I can't tell. Okay, it's partially up. Okay. What about NFTs? Anything like that? Okay, a few. Right. I'll come back to that later. I'll hopefully bring you back into that. So the types of products and services that we're being asked to build now are quite different to the products and services that we were building a few years ago. So we're actually building Web3 enabled games, Web3 enabled applications, and all of them are pretty much following this kind of playbook that I want to try and explain today. So I've hopefully not too controversially put FinTech in the TradFi section or traditional finance section. And that's certainly not in any way to denigrate it, but to actually say that I think it's a foundational layer for transacting. One of the points that was talked about earlier was actually how do we pay people large sums of money, perhaps in prizes, and how do we move that around the world? Well, FinTech itself might not have the answer, but if it interfaces with Web3, there might be some solutions for moving money around a little bit easier. In terms of gamification itself, I've had the real pleasure of working with some of the largest games companies in the world, as well as some really cutting-edge games startups. And I think the things that stand out for me are that gamification doesn't need to be limited to games. There are lots of applications beyond it, and really at its core, it's an understanding of consumer psychology and incentive mechanisms. And as DTM was saying, you can use that in a socially responsible way. So there's lots of really interesting things you can do when you unpack that. And then the last part of what I think is the sort of new evolving playbook is Web3, which is this sort of mystical concept I'm going to try and explain a little bit more today, hopefully demystify it. But it does cover all of the buzzwords, I'm afraid, from blockchain, smart contracts, NFTs, and cryptocurrency. So hopefully I'm going to bring all this together, explain why these things are related, explain why it's a really exciting time for the games industry, and actually why FinTech's got a central role to play in that going forward. So when we look at how we're building software now, and I think where the greatest overlap for these technologies comes to pass, it's actually by combining these three elements. So having an economic incentive, which is oftentimes the bedrock for an interaction in the first place, whether that's taking part in an esports competition, whether it's playing a play-to-earn game, or whether it's something a little bit more creative, identifying what the economic incentive is important, and oftentimes that's where FinTech has a really important role to play. The next important pillar is what we call social value and participation, and this is where brands can build advocacy with users in really, really unique ways that they've not been able to before, and it's also where users can gain really unique interactions with their brands, whether those are games, whether those are completely physical or completely digital engagements. And then the last element is kind of saying, how do you bring all this together? And this is where I think gamification comes to the fore. And it's about having a feedback loop, a hook that makes sense, that keeps the users coming back. If it's a video game, then it's pretty straightforward, right? That is the hook. But there are lots of uses for this technology in different places. So just walking through some of the kind of economic incentives in this new model. There's a lot of talk about earning through your actions, right? So whether that's actually taking part in an esports competition or whether it's taking part in a play-to-earn game where my actions over time accrue maybe credits or tokens or money which I can then cash out, actually doing things can actually reward me with an economic incentive. And increasingly, there's a lot of this crossover in the real physical world as well. So there are startups that are giving you cryptocurrency tokens for the amount of miles that you cycle on your bike, for example, or the amount of time that you spend helping out other people in a charitable concept. So earning through actions is a really interesting part of the puzzle. Increasingly, we've got paying with crypto instead of cash. Now, I know crypto is going through a slightly rocky period at the moment from a PR perspective, but don't write it off. The ability to pay with crypto really isn't going anywhere, and what you're seeing is some market volatility that's likely to correct itself. And if you wanted some evidence of that, Google literally this week announced that with their Google Cloud Compute platform, they're going to allow certain businesses to pay for services using cryptocurrency. So that's a business that's turning over about $6 billion every 90 days, and they think it's important enough to be able to take crypto payments. So the rest of us should probably take note as well. There's also a conversation around how do we enable users to trade and swap items with each other. In a gaming concept, oftentimes that's about things they've earned, but it also can be applied to a physical world setting as well. And then lastly, there's the idea of actually, can we use all of these technologies to create recurring revenue? And NFTs are actually a space which I think are pretty misunderstood at the moment, but the best way of thinking about NFTs is they're a smart contract attached to an asset which actually might be able to give you recurring revenue over time. A good example would be that we're going to have a rentable NFT standard coming soon. So as an artist, you might be able to loan out your art to virtual art galleries, for example, get recurring revenue, and actually get a slice of the trade volume every time it gets handed down to other people. From a social and value participation perspective, this is where I think the kind of convergence of fintech, gamification, and Web3 in particular has got some really, really unique opportunities. So it turns your brand followers into a community, it helps you create a shared decision making, and it also helps you create what I'm calling a set of aligned interests. So anyone that's in the gaming community at the moment probably takes a lot of this stuff for granted, right? If you feel passionately enough about the direction a game should take, oftentimes the developers will listen to you. That advocacy element is starting to spill over into other areas. A good example would be that from a social interest perspective, Patagonia recently came out and said, we're going to basically take our entire company and we're going to put it into a trust so that it's not going to be run by the commercial shareholders, but it will be run by this set of trustees so that we basically stay true to our brand values forevermore. That's really exciting, but if we were to kind of convert that into a gamified Web3 concept, we would say we'll sell a bunch of tokens to shareholders that give them voting rights over how that structure and organization works, and instead of a trust, we'll actually have something called a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. So you actually, just by purchasing a cryptocurrency token, could potentially be running companies in the future, which does have some interesting legal ramifications, but it's undeniably the direction of travel. And the reason that it's spilling over from the games industry is that the gaming community is very, very passionate. You do not want to be on the wrong side of the gaming community because they feel so passionately about the thing they spend time on. But that energy and enthusiasm, I think, is coming over into other areas as well. And we're seeing it through what we call social value and participation. Then lastly, we've got the gamified element, which to me, I mean, I am a gamer, and I think this is really cool that you actually get to now stand up here and talk about games when there was a point in time where you weren't allowed to play them for as long as you wanted to, and you certainly had to deny that you actually played them, okay? But it's pretty cool. So what does that feedback loop look like? Well, increasingly, we're looking at points and rewards that actually have an in real world value to them. Now, that value could be converting into cryptocurrency and therefore being able to cash out. It could be converting them into points that can be redeemed at a retailer, or it could actually be VIP status at certain events. So some games are actually rewarding people with NFTs, which are essentially tickets that you can take to physical events that give you access to backstage areas, maybe access to your favorite movie stars, pop stars, whatever it might be. So that's a pretty interesting feedback loop that's kind of only really possible with this technology when it comes together. The next two are pretty close to my heart, so personal impact and community impact. It might not look like it, but I'm a bit of a fitness addict, and so my Oura ring tells me to sleep and my Garmin watch tells me to exercise, and they sometimes fight with each other about which should be taking priority. At the moment, nothing really happens if I don't do it or if I do it. And in the future, I would expect these devices and I'd expect these brands to reward me for my behavior. I'd like to connect them to my insurance company and tell them my 5K PB and get a discount maybe on my healthcare. I think that's where it's going, and I think that's the personal impact component. With Web3, because it's immutable and trustless, which means we know that something has definitely happened, we can validate these things and prove them in ways that we haven't really been able to before. So that creates this really rich tapestry of opportunities around the personal side of things. I think on the community impact, there are some really interesting startups in the north which are looking at measuring your carbon footprint, for example, based on your transaction spend or your travel or whatever it might be. I'd love to gamify the reduction of your carbon footprint. I'd love you to be rewarded in real terms for that, whether that's cash, again, awards or some sort of perk, right? And we can actually validate and check that if we use technologies like Web3 and gamification together. And then the last thing's about behavioural change. I think games are wonderful, and I totally agree with actually the positive impacts that gaming can have on team building and resilience and communication. But if you start to cross these things over into the physical world as well, which Web3 lets you do, which wearables let you do, and if anyone's been following the announcements from Meta this week, their hardware will let you do, I think this is really where it gets interesting. Because whilst gamification in a virtual sense is, I think, well established, gamification in the physical sense is only really just beginning. So augmented reality, which within 10 years I think everybody will be exposed to, will be bridging the gap between the physical and the digital world, and actually I think will drive behavioural change. So when you're wearing your VR glasses or contact lenses and you go and look at that new car that you want to buy and it pops up and tells you that it's going to destroy your carbon footprint and you'll lose your NFT around carbon saving, maybe you won't do that. Or when you're in the supermarket and again you look at that piece of food and you think, I'd love to have that, but that's going to ruin my calorie count and that's going to have an insurance impact. Maybe you won't do that. That's all gamification, even though it doesn't sound like it's a video game. It's connecting a feedback loop through this digital ownership mechanism of Web3 back into the real world. And to come back to the FinTech element, everything I've talked about has a financial transaction element to it. So unlike a lot of people, and just to be clear, I'm not giving any advice about whether you should buy or sell crypto, I don't believe that banks are going to disappear. I don't believe that everybody is only going to have digital assets and not physical assets. So FinTech isn't going anywhere. I think its role will change. I think that for many consumers, their entry point will not be a bank first or FinTech first entry point. I think it will be brands that we haven't even created yet, but behind the scenes, they will be backed and underpinned by financial institutions, financial service providers, and so there's a large addressable market to go out there. So trying to put this in context, some of the things that we do. So this is a project that we're building and which is launching later this year, and this is a video game deliberately to try and bring all of this together. So this is what's termed as a play-to-earn video game, and does play-to-earn mean anything to anyone in here? Raise your hands if it does. Amazing. Okay, so play-to-earn is getting a little bit of a bad rep at the moment, I think it would be fair to say, but I checked the market cap of the top 3 play-to-earn tokens just before I started talking, and it's still about 3 or 4 billion, and that's now in the bear market at the bottom of the market, and obviously it was worth a heck of a lot more 12 months ago. So play to earn, I don't think is going anywhere. I think it's a little bit like in-app purchases on mobile games. I think we're in the first wave of things that didn't really work out. The market will stabilize and then we'll come back. OppiPets is really in that category and making that bet. So this is a play to earn game which works across mobile, it works across desktop, and essentially people create these avatars, they battle them against each other. There's a whole trading economy that sits inside it, and that's one of the really interesting things about Web3 and FinTech and gamification in this context, is that you can build dynamic markets that would otherwise have been static. So from our client's perspective, all of the NFTs that are created inside of this can move outside of the game, can take on a life of their own, can be traded in lots of different ways, but the client can still get a cutback and the player can still get a cutback as well. So it is a video game, it has all of the things you'd expect a video game to have, but it's part of that new wave of player-centric activity. So there are governance tokens that players can purchase to have a say over the game. There's the Web3 component in terms of the NFTs and the cryptocurrency, but we also have a FinTech layer for premium features, and for transferring fiat currency in and out of the game. So it has the 3 layers I'm talking about. Moving to a different project, but interestingly within the same client group, we have Opus Cloud. Now, everybody in this room has a smartphone, I'm assuming, and most of you will go home tonight and you will plug it in and you will charge it because you have no choice but to charge it. And at night, your phone will basically do absolutely nothing. Opus Cloud wants to change that, and it wants to take the spare compute capacity on your phone and make it available to a global distributed cloud compute network that we're building to actually solve tech for good challenges overnight whilst your phone is charging. Now, that hopefully in and of itself is a really good reason that people should check this out. But we also have a points-based system as well, so we're gamifying this experience. Through this application, we want to have a positive impact on the environment. Cloud computing is a really, really heavy carbon polluter. So if we can reduce some of that, switch it to the devices that you've got in your pockets, which are literally doing nothing at night, and in the same time actually solve some tech for good challenges around protein synthesis, medication for cancer, environmental computations, that seems like a win-win for everybody. But we're gamifying that because every time that you do this, you get a report that tells you what your phone did overnight, you accrue points for your behavior, and you actually can cash those points out for a cryptocurrency. That cryptocurrency can be traded, obviously for other cryptocurrencies, or you can flip it into fiat if you want to get some cash. So again, we've got those 3 elements that we've touched upon, where we have an economic driver, which is the points into crypto. We have a social driver, which is doing good. And we have a gamified element, which is the daily report, league tables, competing with your friends, and hopefully we're going to have a really positive impact on the environment with that. Both of those projects actually share the same cryptocurrency behind the scenes, and that's another thing that's unique about the Web3 world and I think where FinTech is heading. At the moment, the global currency of choice obviously is still pretty much the dollar, but that won't always be the case in the digital world. And companies that build up a crypto ecosystem actually have the ability to sit on top of the traditional FinTech space and create value in their brand, which is unique to their brand and which drives the stickiness. The biggest example of this at the moment would probably be Starbucks. Who shops at Starbucks? Anybody? No one's going to admit to that. Okay, 1. You're in the minority then because 30 million people do, and it's the largest loyalty program in the world outside of China. And they flipped that entire loyalty program onto Web3 with NFTs to give in real life benefits as well as digital benefits. So this is what we're seeing. This is what we're building. FinTech is at the heart of it all. And I suspect there'll come a point in time where Web3 and FinTech maybe just become one, because really they're doing very similar things. But for now, they stand as having an economic incentive, a social value participatory function, and then a gamified feedback loop that brings it all together as well. I should add, I didn't want to say it at the beginning, but I spent 12 years doing this and 20 years building software. I did have a brief journey as a corporate commercial lawyer as well. And I can certainly recommend, I have no connection to DTM, but I can certainly recommend if you're a startup to definitely get your legals checked, IP, employment, all the things that they were talking about. It can save you a lot of drama down the road. And in fact, even professional services is going to be impacted by all of these things as well, and they will change and they will evolve. So it's a really interesting time. I think gamification is central to both obviously video games, but also a broader consumer base of engagement. And I think FinTech and Web3 coming together just creates some really unique opportunities. So yeah, thank you. I don't know if we have any time for questions. I'm happy to do some more.
Does anybody have a question?
Or does no one want to talk about crypto?
We can save them for the panel discussion. You're going to hang around, aren't you, as well, Adam? So yeah, you can be on hand to deal with some of those thorny crypto questions. Thank you for that. That was illuminating. That was really interesting. I'd like to invite James up onto the stage or sofa. I don't really know what we want to refer to it as, to be fair, for our panel discussion. And in the meantime, I'm going to quickly mic up some of our panelists, if that's okay. So James, do you want to introduce yourself whilst I crack on with that?
Happy to do so. Thank you, Joe. And yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for coming. As mentioned, I'm James Hodgson. I'm the UK CEO with a company called 300 Brains. We build, we provide tech teams to build world-leading software products. And having previously specialized in both fintech and gaming as separate verticals, we've definitely seen this trend that's been coming over recent years of those two worlds colliding, as Joe's been saying, but also just gaming features being added really in all kinds of tech, particularly in ed tech and all rare areas of fintech as well. So it's been a pleasure to support FinTech North on this event here today, and it's been really enlightening and inspiring to hear all the activity locally here as well. So with that in mind, we've heard a lot of the possible opportunities in fintech, or applying gamification to fintech, and the growth of the gaming industry. And so what we wanted to do with this last panel was bring on board some experts who are actively introducing these features and building these gamification projects for good in fintech. And so I'd like to invite our panel to the stage, and please join me on stage. Thank you. Oh, and just before we start, actually, please, we just want to get a bit of a straw poll in the room. I think I probably know the answer, but obviously we're here to talk about gamification for good. Just by a show of hands, who here thinks that applying gaming features or gamification in fintech is a good idea, is a positive for the industry? So that's most. And is there anyone who would disagree and say it's not a good idea to gamify fintech? No. Okay, good. So we have a broadly supportive audience. I don't know how representative that is in the public as a whole. I think there's probably still some skepticism about, bringing together gaming and financial products. But with that in mind, Yoda, do you want to join us on stage? Sure. But I'd like to ask our panel each to introduce themselves, your companies, and also why this topic of gamification for good is important to you. Yoda, would you like to go first? Oh, sorry. Actually, Susan, you better go first. Yeah.
No, please.
Okay.
Will I?
Have we got the clicker? Got the slides? Oh, it's here. Sorry. There you go.
Great. Hi. Nice to be here in Liverpool. Want to tick off the list. I actually hate talking to people like this, so please bear with me. I actually prefer, we all are on the same level, so the fact that I'm standing and you guys are sitting, it makes me a bit terrified, but welcome to Jubix. Basically, Jubix is a software. It provides stakeholders as a service, and what we do is we provide stakeholders as a service by bring in a new fintech collaborative marketplace for talent, companies, and investors. We do that by matching their key interests and their skills to the value that they would like to bring to the collaborative marketplace, whether that be liquidity value, talent, or as a startup. We also immerse all of our users into multi-cloud emerging technology services such as NFTs, metaverse, gaming, blockchain-enabled products, as well as create an innovative new sources of revenue and income. So just to give you a bit of background, basically I started a business in edtech, and I kind of created a product that involved AR and VR. So if you can imagine a t-shirt with a strawberry on it, and it's 3D, and it actually smells, and it has the touch, as well as the interactive benefits of the AR and VR. I spent £30,000 in that business. I realized I can't go any longer putting more money into the business, and I didn't have the right stakeholders in place for me to further my developments. So what I did, I pivoted my company and started Jubix, and basically, as of 8 months ago, I started a global tech sprint leadership program, and I selected over 470 people internationally. And I have actually now 27 developers on board working for me free of charge. So in terms of community value, participation value, and making sure everyone feels equal, I believe that Jubix will provide an operating system within a bank, within startups, and obviously in terms of the new talent that is emerging going forward. So that's kind of the crux of my business. And yeah, I hope to talk and discuss with you more about that later. Thank you.
Yoda, would you like to introduce Eco2Wallet?
Yeah, sure. I made like some Tamagotchi. It's a bit if you really want it. Anyway.
You can send it around if you like.
Yeah, maybe later.
Yeah.
Well, actually, hello everyone. My name is Yodaly. Right? And I'm the founder of Eco2Wallet. I'm doing without slides, but I want to do an imagination exercise. I want everyone to close their eyes and think, what was the last thing? Come on, just close your eyes. Imagination time. What was the last thing you bought with your card? Sandwich, metro, tube, dress. How much was it? Visualize it, the price, okay? Now think, what was the environmental impact that purchase had? Okay, open your eyes. We don't know, right? It was very difficult to visualize environmental impact. That's why we created Eco2Wallet. We are a sustainable Visa debit card. We calculate the impact that each purchase has in emissions, and we plant trees for each one of your purchases. So very much like the concept that we were having a discussion a little bit, the idea is that carbon emissions is very difficult to visualize and we can't really understand. So we made it almost like a game. We made a payment card like Visa, and basically we said each purchase has a value of that money and has X amount of sad trees, which is equal to the amount of environmental impact it had, but also X amount of happy trees that you planted through us. And we developed a Tamagotchi, well, like a virtual pet. Remember the Tamagotchi, like a Pokemon. And this Pokemon evolves or gets really happy if you make a sustainable purchase, or gets a little bit sad if you make an unsustainable purchase. And that's one of the things that we decided from the beginning to make a pivot. And it's perfect that you were the pivot, because when we started, I'm a lecturer at the University of London of Energy Finance, and I wanted everyone to understand their carbon footprint. And I was in a very academic exercise that people need to understand their carbon footprint, and people just don't get it. And you know what? That's okay. So we changed the language. We changed the language into, okay, money, sad trees, happy trees, and the Tamagotchi that helps you visualize where are you going with your purchases. We're a female-led business. We are part of the Barclays Rise Accelerator. We got funded by the EIT Digital, and we are one of the first pioneers with FinTech and Gamification, so we're really happy that James thought about us in this journey. We are a female-led business, and we are mostly working in developing our tech and ideally our tokenization side of CO2 emissions, if possible. If anyone would like to help us on that, we are working on the tokenomics at the moment. So please follow us on social media as eco2wallet.com. And if you want to be around, I'm going to be doing some picnic interviews. So the concept is super cool. We are talking about sustainability and finance. And we have a chat if someone wants to enjoy the company of our pet. We have a dog, and the dog just mess around while we talk about sustainability and finance, because the only way to make sustainable debit card payments is to make a very easy language for everybody that is using it. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm Latimer King. I'm here from the British Esports Association. I sit as a senior advisor as well as Chief Development Officer for Esports Global. Thank you, Joe and James, for the invitation down today. I've been in esports for 7 years, and currently we have just bought a national campus in Sunderland where we're going to host all our sort of events up there. We currently run quite a few high school leagues at the moment, where we have around 200 high schools in the UK that compete up towards that. And we're really excited to look at sort of gamification across the board there and sort of our other ventures. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So you're all obviously active in helping users be more responsible, ethical, more sustainable in their decisions. But I do think there are still obvious concerns about gamification in FinTech. So I wanted to start by asking about what are the risks that you had to consider when you were setting up your business, and you were going to make it very obviously combining both gaming and finance elements. Yoda, do you want to start with that?
Yes. Every time you think about money and games, there are alarms that are being raised, right? Because, and I don't want to think like, oh, you have to pay to play the game. It's more like within the financial business. Every time there is a game around, it's just being associated like we want you to spend more money. So what's the ethical side? And if you from a conscious or sustainability perspective, then you want me to spend more to save more of the earth. So how does it work? But there are definitely many benefits around the gamification side, which is trying to change the language of what we're trying to portray. And that's a key challenge. And that's how we're using the gamification side, which is not, we want you to spend more and be active more in add-on games or pay or something in the game, but actually to make a change on what is going to be the impact of whatever you're doing is going to have in your overall spend. Right? What do you think?
For me, I think it's more about the compliance, KYC, AML in regards to FinTech. How we've been able to solve that problem is actually anonymizing the stakeholders. So obviously, if Barclays was in Jubix, for example, they would be anonymized. They would be, basically represented by a yellow dot, which represents finance. So we would be able to unlock services within your banking, environment based on the user's participation. So as your users participate in our games, as they participate in our platform, they now get the services that you are able to give them based on the value that they contribute. In terms of the KYC and AML as well, we've also have a facial recognition software in place in our platform, so that when people are onboarded, they have to give an introduction of themselves. So that also takes into account their voice tone as well. So we have that to recognize in terms of the users that are in our platform, and if there's any fraudulent or bad activities going on within our platform, we're able to target those users and actually suss them out quite quickly. So I think that's kind of a way that we've tried to solve that issue. Also, we've also partnered with AWS, Microsoft, and Oracle in terms of obviously and heighten the security around the regions that we want to cover, because we want to be a global software product. So we want to be able to make sure that our software meets the requirements of each and every country that it interacts with. So that's kind of where we are in terms of how we deal with the compliance side. How about?
Yeah, well, I think coming from the esports background, it's quite a younger generation that we deal with predominantly. So if you're gamifying most of these financial services, depending on the age group, it can be quite an addictive sort of behavior, depending how rewarding the features are. I mean, it's nothing too in-depth we've gone through in the esports community, but James, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, how do you handle that point on addiction? I think that's really important. Obviously, you want people coming back to the app, you want them using it, but you want them to also be doing so in a healthy way. So have you incorporated anything in your products to manage that?
So we, as a business, Ecotuale doesn't promote carbon diets, and carbon diets are some systems that, as soon as you reach a point on your expenditure, some systems are cut off. That's basically a carbon diet. We don't promote that. Instead, we say we reward you if you are taking a Santander bike today rather than an Uber, because we can see that in your purchases. Actually, you're being more active today on a Monday, that you are taking a bicycle, and we would like to reward you with a free ride. And we have noticed that maybe your Pokemon has gone up one level, therefore you're entitled to 10% discount in this organic food. So it's just to help you to make a change in the purchasing behavior of the user, rather than setting a limit, which I think they can be quite harsh, and a user doesn't want to feel scolded, and with red alerts, and I don't want to open this app, like my mom will not do it. But definitely, I want this instead of, oh, I'm going to open this app that is helping me to just do something with a better consciousness.
How would you monitor those behaviors if they're buying from a supermarket? Like, how do you tell if it's good food they're buying or junk food?
We see merchant information. We cannot see itemized. So
right.
we have two big boxes that we cannot see. The first thing is, what are you actually buying?
Yeah.
And the second one is if you take cash, if you withdraw cash from your ATM, whatever you do with that money, then it's also a bit of a blind spot.
Sure.
Is it something that you're looking at addressing?
Well, to be fair, the first challenge is we will have to have access from the supermarket's data to us, and that's almost impossible to happen. There is currently a carbon coalition system that is an open data as well, where it is trying to bring all the merchants' information for sustainability, and the ones that collaborate the least are the retailers, especially for food and stuff like that. The main reason is because they sell that data. That data has a lot of value for them. They know what type of cheese you're buying, they know what type of salmon you like, they know that information. The moment they're giving it to us, then that information loses a lot of value. So that's the first one. And the second one, cash machine and ATMs. Do we really want to know what you're buying with your cash? That just opens, that's not right, probably FinTech, that would be just like a fiat, and that's probably a different discussion.
But for this whole wellness point of view, would you encourage behaviours such as like one cheat meal a week? So if they're going, for example, McDonald's one time, what's your opinions on that?
So McDonald's is perfect because we know exactly what's the carbon footprint of 10 euros or 10 pounds in McDonald's, right? But if you go to an off-brand, I don't even know what it is, and they do sell burgers, I will have no view that actually what are you buying, so my calculations will be a little bit less.
Definitely.
But probably what I can do is, I know that there is a merchant that is offering, that is only vegetarian, right? So we know that it's because the name, it says vegan burgers, right? So we know that the carbon footprint is much less, and we'll just offer you some sort of a 10% discount of that. But again, you don't want to stop the user going to have a McDonald's at 2 a.m. because we all want to do that, right? Especially you. But, the last thing you want is when you want to pay, your card is not working.
Decline,
No, it's okay, do it. But be mindful that there is another way to compensate for that impact in some other ways, and it's okay. We're planting trees for you. So that chippy at 3 a.m., it has to feel good from an environmental perspective as well, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, you know, as a game designer, I would like all my users to be addicted to the game because that's the purpose. But what we've done is put some educational value into our game. So our game is basically a reimagined Tetris. You know, instead of actually having the pieces drop from up to down, we have the pieces already there, and you have to like create a shape from the Tetris pieces. But while doing that, we also have questions pop up based on strategy and problem solving. So what we do is basically base your score around kind of your skills, right? So speed, problem solving, strategy, and creativity. And when we score you, we also match you with other people that have maybe strengths in areas that you don't, or weaknesses in areas that you don't. So you now actually create like a united force of people or stakeholders where you can actually kind of see where you overlap in terms of your capabilities. So even though you'll be addicted to the game, you're getting a lot more value, that operational value, from actually being addicted to the game. Because the more you play the game, the more your community grows. So you might have 5 people today you'll be matched with, but as you play the game more, you're matched with a lot more users. So I guess that is one, you know, way of making addiction, you know, beneficial.
Healthy,
beneficial. But in terms of also when you reach level 15, you actually match with teams that have also reached level 15. So if you can imagine, obviously there's 10 people over here, they now match with 10 people over here based on weaknesses and strengths, the same thing. So if you can imagine it from an internal perspective as well as an external perspective, it also gives that society benefactor as well in terms of people collaborating, coming together, and actually implementing new ideas and recruiting new talent.
What's the response been like to the scoring part of the game?
So the scoring is really quite hard because the Tetris bit is quite easy, right? You can imagine pieces, you're just putting them together, making a shape, a dog shape or whatever, but we actually base it on the dimension around the shape. So it's the kind of methodology behind the game which you don't understand But obviously when you get your scores, then you can now play. I wanted to limit the users to play only once a day, but going back to Yoda's point about the fact that you don't want to kind of like restrict users. So, you know, I opened it up to my team, I listened to my team's input, and I, you know, kind of, you know, made it a limit of 3 times a day. Because obviously you remember the matching value. So if the person's continuously playing, then it doesn't really give that like robustness of the matching. So if you now limit, you know, the amount of times they play a day, you can kind of get a little bit more robustness in terms of the connectivity. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's pretty incredible. But in terms of like bringing it back to sort of addictive qualities, because obviously there's a lot of structure for people who can deal with addiction. But sort of taking on this, so do you not feel if you did remove that, there are some people that could cope with that, or are you only putting the 3 limit a day because that's what's best for the algorithm?
That's a good question. I would say both. I mean, I think the human value of obviously being matched with others. So when you finish the game, you already get matched with people, so you have that interactive element.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that, you know, you also raising your profile every time. So you get that kind of confidence building as well in terms of you know, playing the game. It's not just, you know, you're clicking or, you know, shooting or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah.
You actually get that, oh, I'm really improving, you know, in my skills, in my skill set, in my confidence, and, you know, my personality based on the people that you interact with. I think that is what makes it more valuable in that sense, that you're not just playing a game for the scores, but you're playing a game to increase your value over time.
I think that's quite a good system, to be honest, because then you can know that you've maxed out sort of a session. I mean, how long would that take if you were to go through all the games? Is there a time frame on that?
Well, there is a time frame per game, but I don't know the overall time.
It's good because it gives everyone the fair, same playing ground.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Same time allocation for the set amount of.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I think this builds into something I know you've been very active in, Lat, in terms of player well-being. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for addiction on sort of esports and helping player wellness, I mean, there's lots of sort of stuff we have to look at. Because if we've got some of our esports athletes playing 10 hours a day consecutively for weeks on end, we have to look at sort of new ideas such as eye health and ear health. So one of the things that we've done to sort of combat that is the 20-20-20 rule, which is they stand up for 20 minutes, walk around, then look away for 20 seconds. And then they have that sort of break in between. For ear health, the best one has been sort of leaving the custom settings when you log into a game. But I mean, also the mental well-being and the physical of back pain and having your chair in the right position for posture reasons, again, all beneficial stuff, but having a limit on your certain game is really important. So I think that's good.
I actually see a lot of overlaps with esports.
Yeah.
And Jubix, but also the use of LCD screens. So if you obviously, you know, if you think about it from a Barclays, I'm only using Barclays because I used to work for them, so I'm, you know, cheering on Barclays. But what it is, you know, where you have the interactive screen. So just imagine now we're all here today, and we had the interactive screen when we walked in. All of you would have known who's the, well, not by facial recognition, but by you know, based on their skills or their level of investment. You'd be able to know, you know, how many investors are here. You'd be able to know how many talented, you know, based on different areas of expertise. And you'd also know how many companies are here just by visual. So that in itself simplifies the whole onboarding process, whether it be an event, whether it be recruitment, or whether it be, you know, in terms of, I think the legal team here talked about earlier about having the various stakeholders from the very get-go, because a lot of startups don't actually realize that they need the legal person, they need a strategist, they need a CRM agent, they need a developer. All they do is have an idea and really want to go gung-ho and just get into the idea, and then they meet all these challenges going forward. So if you're able to have all of those stakeholders present at the exact time when you're able to start your idea, whether you actually work for a corporation as well, you can now, you know, kind of strategize against do I leave my work? Have I got enough value? Have I, so have I got enough people? So that's really important, I think, when people want to engage with gaming, but also fintech as a, bigger market.
Did you want to come in on that?
Well, I guess it was more onto the self-regulation, right? Even if your game stops, you still want to continue, but I probably wanted to ask it more in the audience is who has a game installed on their phones? Who has it? Just show.
Oh,
show
downloaded.
Hands. Who has a game? 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is quite a minority because this is fintech and gamification conference, and you're thinking, is it games not serious enough? Why not the majority of the population has a game installed on their phones at the moment, and why it's removing the seriousness out of especially getting into the financial industry. And I think there are several challenges across that everybody here will probably see more and more in the future, which is access to those users that doesn't have a game, right? How do you convince someone to use a game? And maybe the challenge is maybe don't call it a game, right? Maybe some people that say, I'm an adult, I'm a responsible adult, I don't have time to play games.
Well, I think we're seeing this in the gamification. I think it was mentioned earlier by one of our speakers that something like Duolingo, for example, that is a game. It's just a gamified education app, same as you're making gamified apps. So I think a lot of things, sometimes we don't consider them necessarily games, but these gamified features are present amongst the apps. So it's whether you consider them a game or not.
Well, but who considers them? The creator or the player? So that's the trick. Maybe we are all building here the gamification side, but the user, how do you want to be portrayed? For example, for us, we are a financial company, right? We have a big challenge to be taken seriously as a financial player because we have virtual Pokemon in the banking app, right? It sounds like what my kids should be playing with. But actually, no, we're for adults. So definitely I think there's a challenge in language and how you portray your solution and how you want to get to the majority of the people that are actually not within the game.
Well, it's the same from what we've seen in cryptocurrency as well. A lot of these sort of wallets as well, they've been very gamified as well to make it seem more like a game, but you're trading huge quantities of money. I don't know how I personally feel about that. I agree, it should be treated more adultly. So, I don't know, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
But it's okay, like this journey of gamification, not gamified, I think we're gonna see it more within any business, right? Think about a bakery. And I'm pretty sure the whole system of rewards and what your neighbor is buying, or the type of bread and which one is more healthier for you, I'm sure it's going to be like that. And we're going to see in the future some genetic side of the gamification side of your genetics and your health and everything that I think is going to be a bit more opportunities for companies that are not probably on gamification, that will have some sort of reward system inside.
No, that sounds great. So I think just before we go to questions from the audience, I think it'd be useful for anybody looking to get into this space, just to give your top sort of features that you found have been the most engaging with the apps that you've built. What have you found to be the best examples of using these gaming features in fintech products?
Shall I start?
If you want.
Okay. Progress. You want to know where you are. And I think it'd be easy on the progress and make progress very understandable. There is a really cool, well, it's not a cool story, but remember Sisyphus? The guy that is like the old Greek historian that he got punished, but every day he needs to pull like a huge ball across the hill, and then as punishment the ball comes down again. And someone was saying Sisyphus will be really happy and he has a counter, because he sees his progress, and every time he pulls the ball up the hill and then it comes down, it's just one more point. So you need to be able to show to the user how progress works in a very easy way. So progress is definitely the key one. The second one for me is sustainability. Make sure that your game has actual sustainability impact. Quantify it with CO2. Even if the user donors are CO2, make sure that you internally you have some sort of identification for CO2, and in my case is sad trees or happy trees. And the third one is change the language. the language that for you is simple, for the rest of the users is not. So change the language and talk to people that even are in different countries, different languages, different everything, and change the language according to what they want to hear.
Sure. And based off like progress in these gamified sort of fintech users, do you feel like microtransactions will have a play in that? Do you feel like more people will take on the game side of these fintechs and want to enhance their progress there rather than use the financial service itself because they're enjoying the game?
Yes, well, you want to make them enjoy it, but at the end, the game, in our case, is to see progress on sustainability.
Yes.
Right? So rather than spend more money so you are helping more the environment, is make conscious purchases. Do you really need that Uber ride that is £25, or maybe you just can have a free ride back today, right? So I think it's more like the actionable purchasing behavior. That's what makes a difference, at least in our specific case.
Sure. Right? I mean, that question can go the same for you as well. Do you think people would buy into the love of the game more than the financial use or not?
Because they don't actually know that they're unlocking services. So obviously we've basically made a social fintech app. So they basically are buying into Jubix based on the fact that they believe that they're going to connect with stakeholders, whether that be financial stakeholders, talent, or companies. So when they actually play the game, that's only at that point in time that they know that they're going to be unlocking these services.
Understood, sure.
Yeah, so when they unlock these services, it will add value to their credibility in Jubix.
Right.
So utilizing the services on offer also enhances their value. So it's like you're getting points, you then get the unlocking of services, and then on top of that, you're valued higher in Jubix. So, let's say, you buy an estate, right? In 5 years, you're going to get a return on investment that is double or triple times the amount that you paid for it. Similarly, you are the asset. You, the individual, are the asset. Whatever you do within Jubix, you get the valuable attributes in terms of your participation on the platform itself. Just going back to what Yoda said earlier, I think it was in regards to the key things. I think it definitely needs to be. We need to create systems of connectivity that have value. I mean, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm sure most of you have those apps. But I actually believe the most valuable app right now is WhatsApp. Simple, wake up in the morning, you don't see Donald Trump's face all over the screen. It's just, direct to the point. You've got your family group, you've got your, maybe work group, your friends, and you can connect to them very quickly. Similarly, if they're all around the world, you can connect with them in a very simple way. And that's basically what Jubix does. We pull all of the stakeholders in a very simple design and show you the value, the liquidity value. So I think that's something I missed out, that we actually calculate every single user's value. So if you're worth 50K, remember you're anonymous, so don't be upset. At the end of the day, that's how we equate, the overall value of your network. It's not just based on you having 250, 50 followers or whatever. It's actually based on your followers' equity. So I feel another point is diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I say diversity, we're talking across board. I mean, we want Jubix to be all the way from a 10-year-old all the way to a 60-year-old be able to use this app. I'm sure there's some legalness in terms of that, but I was thinking maybe they'll be matched based on their age. So obviously, if it was a 10-year-old, he wouldn't be matched to a 50-year-old, and vice versa. So another thing I would say is education. So we are looking to start, our go-to-market plan from an educational perspective. So we are starting from the ground up instead of going to the banks first, because we know how hard it is to get banks on side. So we're looking at, targeting educational institutions from secondary, primary, and universities to actually have this as an internal feature, but also an external feature to the activities that they already run within the schools. So when we have all of that within the app, then we now can go to the banks and say, we've got all these people, you know. So yeah, that's, I think, collaboration, diversity, and having a level up process, you know, you want to get users excited, you know, you want them to feel involved. So, you know, in our game, you have like the level up process where you have the multiple levels, but also we want the users to be part of the creation, you know, part of the development, the ongoing development, because, you know, no business ever stops, right? You have that ongoing development, you have that whole, you know, channeling of ideas. So we want the users to also participate in the ongoing development of Jubix. And we see Jubix even being in McDonald's, you see it being in any establishment. So if you're in McDonald's today and there's loads of stakeholders there, potentially you could meet with, you know, your potential investor. You don't have to wait till an event happens, or you don't have to wait for that investor to actually meet you face to face. If he wants to meet you and you want to meet them, it's just kind of like a, you know, click of the button, and then you can actually see each other face to face. And we don't have no messaging either. So gone are the days of traditional email and all that. We don't believe in that. We believe in real time, you know, activities. So when you match with other people, you have the video stream. So you actually straight into a Zoom call as soon as you've matched with, you know, a couple of people. So, you know, it gives that real participation effect instead of just having that, oh, we're connected, I'll follow you, you follow me. You really get right into the crux of things straight away. So yeah, that would be
I think the opportunities you mentioned in financial inclusion, financial education,
exactly, accessibility as well as the big one.
And anything that can be learned that's been particularly effective in the esports sector that you think FinTech should be adopting?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just online safety. Again, you're saying 10-year-olds are getting involved in this. I mean, it's, to be honest, something we're creating at the moment. It's just like an online safety net where we can verify, children can go on and verify, as Dave said earlier, and play against one another with the same skill base, same age, same sort of demographic. Something that can definitely be applied to FinTech tools, yeah.
Great, thank you. So I think we have about 10 minutes left, and hopefully there's a mic in the audience. Are there any questions from the audience? One over here. Do you have a mic?
There's no mic, so I can just repeat the question back.
Okay, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, really interesting to hear from you speak. So I guess, Yodaly, I suppose this one's for you, but I'm interested in what everybody else thinks about this as well. So you mentioned that you're looking at tokenization, I think, is that right? So we've done a lot of tokenization work, and the white papers where oftentimes it sort of becomes tricky, where people actually have to define what the token is, how it's going to work, where the value sits, where the utility lies. Where do you think that will be for your product and platform?
So when we started, we created a sister company called Eco2 Exchange. And Eco2 Exchange is a carbon tokenization platform from individuals. And basically, I don't know if you know, but currently carbon can be traded from large corporates and large polluters. Yeah, I see some people nodding. So if you don't know, carbon at the moment is a commodity like rice or like flour, but only large corporates have access to it. And Eco2 Exchange, their mission was to bring it in emissions from individuals, tokenize it, and trade it by individuals. We are still working on that. We are currently developing the white paper for that, especially because our token is almost like a negative currency. Like you don't want to have it, but regardless, you're going to have more and more and more, and according to the limits that you have more, then you have access or less access to some sort of rewards. We need to be very careful because carbon itself as a commodity is highly regulated across the world. So the moment you develop a token that becomes almost like a Gov coin, or almost like a stable coin, then it hits a bunch of regulations where we are like, so definitely we need to work very, very, very heavily with our people in the team and maybe with externals on how to make a project that it's borderline with regulation to not fall into it. And the most important thing, that people understand it. So Co-Bank, they were having an accelerator for cooperative systems, right? And we were saying we are almost a cooperative because the carbon trading feeds out of each one of your individual consumption. And then if you go into a trading platform, and then if you took 100 Ubers, that's equal to X amount of CO2. That CO2 becomes a token. And because I am riding a bicycle for Santander every day, I have a bunch of negative tokens, therefore I can make a trade. So that's the initial system of Eco2 exchange. And then what we realized in a bunch of mentorship sessions we were doing with the co-bank was that users were not ready for, not only for have a token in your wallet, first to have a wallet, to go to the KYC process of a wallet, second, to have a token, and third, to understand that they can be traded for money of their daily expenditures. So we hit a bunch of barriers. Definitely, I think there is a huge market. I think it's like an 86 billion market, the person who cracks the code of individual carbon tokenization. And there are some DAOs around happening. But anyway, Eco2 Exchange, if you want to work on that, just call me and we'll figure it out. Anybody else, if you're interested about carbon tokenization from an individual perspective, just let me know.
So we're looking at tokenization from an NFT perspective. So we obviously have a set of NFTs done by myself based on the collaborative force of coders that have actually put their time and effort into building Jubix. So what we've done is those NFTs will actually work in the game. So they will be tradable. So as people play the game, they would be able to also trade their NFTs with other participants within Jubix. We've reimagined NFTs, so we connect like a whole community per NFT. So based on certain values they put in the onboarding process, we match you to the NFT. Does that make sense? So you can now grow value in the NFT because we've actually consistently bring in a community of people to that one NFT. And you know, the characters were made in 2016, so they already have heritage based on my edtech business. So we have like probably 9 collections altogether. But yeah, that's the way that we're looking at using the NFT.
Yeah, and for esports, I mean, it's not something we sort of touch specifically in our territory, but we follow it really closely for the metaverse space as well, because there's been quite a few developments in sort of esports titles being produced from metaverse. So that's what we'd be looking into, having tournaments based around that. Thank you.
Great. Any more? Yeah, please.
Away from what you're doing, what are the other great examples of gamification and transactions?
Good question. So the question, so just to repeat for everyone at home, the question was, what are the other great examples of gamification?
Roblox. I don't know if you have children, but my son is 11, and you know, even when I first saw him interacting with the game, you know, the way they collaborate, you know, it's a real skillful thing. Especially, you know, everyone has different skills, right? So you're trying to build those skills up, you know, in a gamified way, right? So, you know, Roblox really does that in a very effortless way. Obviously, we don't have a Roblox for adults, but yeah, they've already started building like the metaverse lands and all of that. And I think it also heightens the creativity, right? So, you know, creativity really helps a lot of people to build their confidence. Like, I literally just helped my friend who's a social worker start a food and hygiene business 2 days ago. She's been wanting to start this 5 years ago, right? But she's just had small children and she's gone back to work. She's seen it as quite a heavy, you know, load on her. And I said, you know, take a week of work, you know, jump into your business, you know. And she's like, oh my God, I've got a domain, you know. And it's like so exciting, and it teaches you things that you didn't know. So you can also teach others, and that's kind of what we see. Like in the future, it wouldn't be a thing of education, it would be a thing of trade-off, right? Trade-off of skills, trade-off of, you know, assets, and trade-off of liquidity. So that's really
I agree. Also, Roblox is a fantastic one, just from the revenue streams that come from it. Like, if you're an influencer, you can broadcast your gameplay. You can also earn money off your gameplay by playing in-game and trading that in for real-life cash. And if you're competitive in that sport, you can earn money through playing competitions. So that's sort of been a fantastic revenue stream, depending if you want to come in from the pro scene or if you're just looking to get involved in a fun game. I think that's a good start. But for more an adult side, I mean, there are games which are 18 plus where you can earn significant money if you're at the top end, and the influencer side. And obviously there's a huge career pathway through that. But yeah.
What I've seen in terms of FinTech specific, I've seen it on credit score. So I was in an Innovate Finance event, it's called FinTech For Good, and they were basically, a company was telling me how they do score analysis, so credit score, and it's through a game. So instead of doing through the normal credit systems, now they develop their own game with personality traits, and basically they tell you if you are allowed to get some sort of loans based on the games that you're playing. So I think that's one. The other one I think is in pensions. According to some sort of gamification schemes, they realize what type of pension you are most likely to have and most likely to be. So it's just basically telling you, according to your personality or your life expertise, what type of pension you should be getting into. And the third one, which is probably not related and outside of it, it was about neurology. And if there is a game that you play today, in 5 years and in 10 years, and it's telling you your skills on the brain, how much they are upgrading or downgrading, and then basically that feeds into, it's a startup of a friend of mine, and it feeds into, for example, the kids with autism or adults with some sort of degenerative disease. It basically tells them how quickly it's going, and there are some like studies in the back that is helping. So I think whenever you see games, probably don't think about it's a game that is going to help me to do something. Just think about that plant and how that plant can be gamified to be more better for society.
Great, thank you. Have we had any questions online? Things come through from YouTube. Okay. So yeah, one more.
Yeah, thank you. So fantastic talk. Really enjoyed listening to you. Beautiful people doing beautiful things. But if I can break down what I feel your core interests are, so that's about what beautiful name is.
Thank you.
I feel like you are concentrated around skills development from a personal perspective, and then Susan. So for you, I'm feeling like you really want to represent the improvement of society and that kind of social constructive kind of angle. And then Yoda, awesome project. I feel like yours is more about social conscience and making sure people are doing the right things. So if I kind of got a handle on where you're coming from, I'd be very interested to find out how you felt about central bank digital currencies and whether what you're doing in the future was adopted as part of that program.
So I'm very much for a hybrid approach. Obviously, coming from banking background myself, I don't believe that banks will be liquidated and there will be no banks anymore. I believe that if banks are able to collaborate and work with external markets in an anonymous way, I believe that banks will obviously be able to save any reputational risk or in terms of compliance, etc. Because they've got the startup or the new product that simplifies the onboarding process, that does all the KYC, AML, and now they can now offer their services. Whereas obviously if it's just straight to consumer, then it's more of a stringent process, right? But if they are able to now work with startups instead of actually counteracting against startups, I think if we have a more hybrid approach, we'd be able to, bring a lot more products to market a lot more quicker. Because that's what I'm all about, really. Because the length of time for return on investment, even probably has some sustainable factors in terms of like, you invest today, you get your return on investment in 3 to 4 years. I mean, 3 to 4 years. Whereas we need the money now, right? So if I invest today, I want a product built in 6 months, and then I want a return on investment in 1.5 years. That's where I see the market going. That things are channeled a lot more quicker with the hybrid approach being implemented.
So I used to work for the regulator. And I guess the moment you involve central banks in business to consumer, things can be a little bit too messy. So my recommendation is keep it business to business. Keep the concept of liquidity and solvency and everything. The banks understand it very well, and the users don't. So maybe there's an opportunity to make some sort of educational schemes for the end consumer if the central bank wants to channelize it through us. But I don't think there should be a direct connection between the central bank itself to the end consumer. Otherwise, the people like us will be bombarded by too much information. Definitely, there is a lot of opportunity to go from B to B to C from the central bank perspective. And I'm sure many banks, especially here in the UK, were working on that. But now that the inflation is coming, our electricity prices are increasing, we're heading to one of the worst recessions ever. Imagine trying to convey some sort of language that is going to help the end consumer to understand that why is my cheese more expensive today than it was 6 months ago. That's definitely an opportunity, but I don't think now it's the moment, or I don't think in the probably next 5 years. But definitely there is something that can be done.
That's a great question. I think for us, especially coming from this younger audience, it's much more difficult for these sort of big, larger institutions to get involved and get sort of behind these younger audience, because we're all hiding in these sort of weird areas on the internet. So when yeah, it's true. But when there's a massive esports tournament, and there's, we hosted one back in December, 500 million viewers. So when we're all there at one point and one time, it's very easy to promote that. So and get that audience, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that very pertinent question. And I think we're coming up on time. So just before I hand back to Joe, is there any final messages that you have, or perhaps where you'd like to see the industry in 5 years' time to leave our audience with?
Okay, so where do I see the business itself in 5 years? Look, a year and a half ago, I didn't know that I was a gamer. And suddenly I became one, just from my academic perspective, to try to convey a message a little bit better. So I guess in 5 years' time, probably maybe a game is a solution, but maybe it's something else than a game. It's a game plus salt and pepper. And I cannot wait to see what that salt and pepper is going to be in the next 5 years, for sure. And my last message is, coming from the sustainability perspective, is be mindful of your personal environmental footprint. At least get to understand what is it. And if it's too complicated, it's okay. Find a partner like Ecotuale to help you understand in a very easy way what is your environmental impact on a personal level that you have with the rest of the world.
Well said.
I see us all playing games. I think it will just help with, the fact that digital kind of took the way that we interact away from us. We had, mum and husband sitting next to each other, interacting on phones, right? And they're actually supposed to be talking to each other. So I think, if we have the gaming element, you'd be able to have that interaction felt more. And then also in regards to bridging the gap between, the younger generation and the older generation, I think if you have those game features in your products going forward, you can also bridge that game between, the older generation and the younger generation, where they can actually interact via this game and still have the quality of the game itself, and not actually, if my young one saying to me, oh, I'm too old, I don't know about the latest things. But now you're playing a game where you're both involved and you get the same value. So I think definitely the hybrid approach as well, with corporates, and the startups really engaging with one another, I think that will also help with the future development of gamification and fintech. And fintech is just such a quadruple in number in terms of where it's going in 2030. So hopefully that will also help with the gaming market, and also in heighten its prospects as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think regulation is going to be very important behind gamification in financial services and fintech, obviously. Just for a younger audience getting more involved, it needs to be a bit more regulated, and it's definitely happening, and we're on route there. And probably last note is check out esports. I mean, love to see more people involved, and parents, if you're out there, get your kids more involved. It's great active media and some huge benefits. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, thanks. Sorry.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, thanks to all of you for coming and speaking here in Liverpool and being part of the FinTech North community. Obviously, we bring together a community of over 5,000 people across the north, and thinking about some of the people in this room here today and some of the people watching on the live stream, there'll be entrepreneurs here, there'll be advisors here, there may well be investors here. Hopefully, you're all going to hang around for a drink and do some networking afterwards. I suppose my question is, what can the FinTech North community do to support you in what you're doing, and who are you looking to meet within that community? I don't know where you want to start. Yoda, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Marketing. So imagine FinTech is very difficult because you have to explain what is Fin and what is Tech to a bunch of people. And the second is gamification. Is like, is that like Tetris? So definitely I need marketing, and it's how you convey the message and how you tell other people. So I need probably experts in marketing and organization to come and reach out to me.
So I'm just looking for people to onboard. I'm not really looking for investment. I'm looking for investors to be onboarded. So for me, it's more, just onboarding process, universities, investments, corporations.
Even with that, so much of FinTech is B2B, isn't it? So, do you need help with that onboarding process?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have partners with, like I said earlier, Microsoft, AWS, and Oracle. So they're also enhancing that marketing element. But in terms of actually having the users, that's because Jubix doesn't work without users. It's about the coordination, the triangle. So if there's no triangle, there's no Jubix. So the more people that we have on the platform, the more matches we can make, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, please, reach out to me if you know where you can support. Thank you.
Likewise. Also, picking up on that, I mean, we're just here to spread awareness of esports around the sort of nation and internationally. We've helped set up a few other federations across the board. And, if you feel you need help gamifying or anything, please reach out. I'm sure there's always a chat to be had, or we can help out in any way possible. Thank you.
Yeah. I just say keep doing these events. I think it's always great to.
I was going to say you didn't really talk much about 300 Brains.
Oh yeah, no one wants to hear about what we do. It's more no, we're always here to talk with anyone really in FinTech, gaming. Anyone's got a startup idea. I just think having these meetings, keeping the conversation going, just hearing what's happening in the industry is always helpful to spread the ideas. So thanks everyone for your attention, and thanks Joe for organising.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Just gonna close out here, if that's okay. So thanks everybody for coming along today and for being an engaged audience, asking some questions. It's always key. As you can see, there's some canapes, some nibbles at the back of the room, plenty of drinks and refreshments for people to tuck into. Thanks to everybody who joined online, and can't wait to be back in Liverpool and hopefully see you at an event soon. So thank you.